Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Jonasz Erofeev. As Ukraine appears to gain initiative in the war, inflicting painful costs on Russia's war economy, speculations begin about how this could affect Putin's grip on power. Some have even suggested the Russian president could be considered a liability by his own loyalists, leading to a potential ouster. At the same time, some believe Putin could try a risky maneuver in order to turn the negative battlefield trend around, perhaps by using his leverage on Belarus or even launching a hybrid warfare action against a NATO country. Joining us here today is Sergei Erofeev, sociologist at Rutgers University. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, Janusz.
So let's begin with these speculations, shall we? The situation on the battlefield is not optimal, to say the least, but some have suggested that as a result of that, there could be, if not a revolt, then at least some sort of upheaval at the Kremlin, that cracks are beginning to show. Would you agree with this?
First of all, Janusz, these things have happened in history multiple times, so this cannot be ruled out. But the thing to take into account is, of course, that the surveillance system within Putin's inner circle is tighter than ever in history. So everybody who wants to plot something against Putin has to talk to someone. And all these talks will be monitored, and they know this perfectly well. But the situation, as I already said, has been recorded in history so many times. It's just a question of time and cost to replace Putin. How it will be done, we don't know. The Russians love talking about the story of Paul I and about the sniffing box and about the little scarf. Whether Putin's cronies will do that, whether his security officers can do that, we don't know. There's one propaganda guy, rather than journalist, Pavel Zarubin, who exclusively takes interviews from Putin. So my students a while ago even created a fantasy that he will bring a special microphone while talking to Putin. Now this microphone will shoot. So we don't know. We don't know what will happen.
I believe this might have been inspired by an action movie about North Korea, actually. I think that was the plot point, with an explosive device in a camera or something like this. This was, by the way, comedy and not serious action film. But anyway, coming back to this issue, because you've mentioned cronies within Putin's inner circle potentially planning something, but there is also tensions outside of the corridors of power. Quite recently, an ex-soldier who has expressed his dissatisfaction with the regime and even warned about a potential mutiny. Alexander Lunin, shortly after he did that, he was arrested. So does it show that the authorities are treating any suggestions of disobedience even more seriously than before?
Well, before Alexander Lunin, there were two other incidents. And the first one was not actually Yevgeny Prigozhin. And that happened 3 years ago. As we remember that mutiny, much better organized, much better supported, not individual out of nowhere like Lunin. But it's not entirely out of nowhere, because before Prigozhin, there was Alexander Gabuev, the Yakut shaman, who started a march on Moscow, on Kremlin, in order to dispel Putin's evil charms. So these things, of course, are very important indicators of popular discontent. The question is whether this discontent is intensifying. And we can say yes, judging from our multiple observations and even some sociological and pollster data, even coming from the Kremlin officials' pollsters, we can see that this intensification of discontent is taking place. And of course, Ukraine, with its recent successes damaging the Russian infrastructure, is contributing to that discontent tremendously.
So now, given that Putin is under pressure, there are suggestions that he could become even more reckless, that he would like to turn things around, perhaps not matter what costs it would entail. Do you see this happening in any way in the near future?
Well, this has happened already through Putin's career in this war. Even in 2022, when he started to feel that he is losing, he used two techniques. One is nuclear threat, which he will never do, turn into reality, because he's a mafia guy who wants to enjoy life. He's a highly hedonistic person, not idealist, not a fanatic who's ready to die for some idea. So this is one thing. His rhetoric, he's putting a brave face in a losing situation, which has lasted for a very long time, but it's principally, fundamentally, a losing situation for Putin. That's why he started this war, because he didn't want to lose his power and his life. And the second thing is possible escalation. He is a master not only of denial and propaganda and impression management, but he made organize escalation in various ways, like starting to draw men to the front lines by force, like it happened in 2022 in September. So he has a repertoire of possibilities. What he will do, we don't know. It may be a combination of things. But one thing is, which has been suggested to Putin by his cronies, by his siloviki, by the law enforcement generals, is that he should not run the elections this fall, because his party is going to lose and Putin will be further weakened. But this will not happen, because Putin's mafia rule is based on the principle that there is some modern structure within the society which is called elections. So his rule is electoral authoritarianism, so he can't deal without that. He would rather organize a massive fraud with elections using electronic online voting, but he will not be able to go away from this practice. So all these are different elements of playing this game, including escalation, like trying to force more people to go to the war.
Do you think that Putin is so attached to the illusion of democracy? I mean, he has been clamping down on civil liberties in many other areas. That includes the whole situation with internet access, with VPNs, with messaging services, forcing people to use a state-mandated messaging service instead of the ones they used to have. Do you think he could still be testing ground on a further crackdown, like saying, well, we're at war, so we really need to postpone those elections after all?
It cannot be totally ruled out, but the scientific approach takes into account the principle of what are the foundations of this rule. The foundations of Putin's mafia rule are dual. One leg, one pillar, is that he is a streetwise patsan, youth gangster, mafia boss, and he's not a conventional politician. That's one thing. But the other thing why Putin became the president is that Russia at least started some elementary forms of democratic culture to be developing. So he came to power during his first presidential term as a defender of democracy. And he's the president of Russia only because a significant number of people consider themselves voters who elected him. And they think that if something goes wrong, they can elect someone else. So at least this is inherent in the political culture in Russia today. Whatever the degree of its development, you can argue that Russians are very, very undeveloped as a democratic nation, but some elements are there, and Putin cannot ignore them without getting into a much riskier situation.
And speaking of risky situations, do you think that Vladimir Putin could try to escalate horizontally by perhaps staging some sort of false flag operation which would draw a NATO country into the conflict, or by pushing Belarus closer to military confrontation with Ukraine? Do you think that any of that is a possibility at this difficult moment?
You see, it's again the impression Putin can make. All he does is impression management. His greatest successes have been in the field of cognitive war, not kinetic war on the battlefield, where he's basically losing, but he's trying to pretend that he will win any day now. And that's why Ukraine is attacking the Russian infrastructure, because I, Putin, am winning, I'm about to win. But he clearly understands he's not a crazy guy. He has his mafia rationality, his terrorist rationality, maybe short-term, maybe limited, but he has that rationality. And being a rational guy, he understands perfectly well that he's not managing even Ukraine, not to mention Finland or Estonia, Latvia, etc. He cannot afford that unless he engages in all-out nuclear exchange, which will not happen.
So speaking of cognitive warfare, because you've mentioned that, do you think that this could be what is basically, if not at the core, then at least the reason for the escalating tensions between Poland and Ukraine right now? Because whatever we think about the causes, right, this political issue is something that the Kremlin, basically, objectively speaking, really wanted to see for quite a while. You know, allies starting to look at one another as rivals, even enemies, instead of basically going hand in hand against a common threat. Do you think that this might be the result of some cognitive operations taking place somewhere in the background?
You know, the extreme approach here would be that all the troubles in the world are due to Putin's evil doings. Like, for example, the 7th of October in Israel, the attack which created a new war which turned out to be very beneficial for Putin. We can't really say, but it's true that Putin's operatives coordinated that with Gaza and Iran. We don't know. We can speculate that Putin also does a lot in Poland. Well, not only speculate, we perfectly know that Putin's agents are active or relatively active in Poland. And of course, he rubs his palms with pleasure when he sees tensions growing between democratic nations. That's definitely one of his goals. And he is absolutely happy when he sees this falling out between the United States and Europe. So,
and we have to park our conversation there, unfortunately. Nevertheless, still something to be explored, perhaps at a future opportunity. Sergei Erofeev was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thank you.
And I'm Jonasz Rowinski. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us.